All right, welcome, Todd. Welcome to AyAyAyAi. AyAyAyAi. Yeah, I know, right? So over the top. Today we have Todd. He's an executive. Is it how do you say that again?
Executive Syzygyst.
Syzygyst. Okay, Syzygyst.
Yes.
I knew I had it. I just wanted you to roll off your mouth. It sounds so much better off of yours than mine. But yeah, so today we're going to be discussing a lot of things AI and how it affects different areas in the industry. Asif, what do you see today from today's podcast? What are your focuses are? What do you want to talk about?
We talk about Star Treks with most of our guests. So recently I just started like asking the guest ahead of time, like, are you a Star Trek fan? Because if you are, we're gonna just talk about Star Trek. But of course that won't be fair, right? We want to talk about other topics. So look, Todd, I know Todd for a while now, and when we get into the discussion, the groove of that discussion, his ability to reference things from the past and make it impactful for the future and connect the dots with the present, that's literally his title. His title is to bring the celestials things into a single row, so all the ducks are in the row, right? I am so thankful for Todd to make this time and the efforts to join us, because we have so much to learn, right? And once we get bored about learning, we're going to jump into all the movies, all the TV shows, all the sort of nuggets of understanding of how the movies have shifted the world that we're in today. Because to be honest, we wouldn't have as much fun in this podcast if it wasn't for the movies that we've watched and visualized what the world should look like in 2023. And that frustration of not having the world the way that Back to Future presented is probably drove us to the point of pushing forward with technologies like blockchain, AI, trustworthy banking, all sorts of new technologies that we're seeing today are coming together because of those frustrations. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to let Todd take over, make his introduction, because Todd, go full in. Like, let people know what it is that you're about and how do you do business and all the things people need to know. Please go all in.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Asif, Lucky. It is an honor for me to be here. I love the opportunity to share ideas with you, with your excellent audience, and looking forward to some great sparking of new thoughts and new perspectives. So, just to clarify, what an executive syzygyst comes from, it comes from syzygy, which is a phenomenon in astronomy when three celestial objects align, like the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, in a solar eclipse. And that's how I do business in my company, Todd Packer and Associates. It's about alignment of opportunity, value, and excellence in order to help companies that are developing new technologies or in advanced manufacturing identify government funding for research, as well as to do broader business development efforts to make this a better world. And I believe that it's grounded in my passion for innovation that's aligned with the Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is about understanding that we all have the right to develop new ideas and share them across frontiers and so forth. And that kind of grounds what I do. Practically speaking, I help companies with proposal writing, research, consulting, executive coaching, and so forth in this space. And guess what? AI is affecting some industries that I'm involved with.
No way!
Imagine that.
I guess
Which ones?
So just a couple examples. One is the letters after my name, CFAPMP, refer to I'm a certified foundation level proposal manager, and that's from certification from the Association of Proposal Management Professionals. Proposals are basically, the documents that people write in response to, say, a government request for a proposal or a business, and people will write these up and using best practices and so forth. So, like any profession, there are some specific ways to do that. Lo and behold, I don't know if you've heard of this Chat GPT thing that's come along, and suddenly We're still learning. It's ever evolving. Maybe we can ask ChatGPT, "What are you?" and see what it responds. But I think that, and we'll get to that idea of if it's going to respond truthfully or commercially, as what those mean. But in the proposal profession, there's a lot of discussion about AI. And does this mean that companies no longer need proposal writers? That you can somehow say, here's what the government's asking for requirements, write something up for it. So there's a lot of discussion, a lot of great conversations, and a lot of great presentations by people a lot smarter than I am around how do we respond to this? How do we leverage these tools so that we can still be relevant as a profession and be better, possibly as humans respond to more proposals more effectively by having tools that support what we do. And that's one example. What I do in a lot of ways is relates to government procurement, how the government buys things. And lo and behold, AI is starting to be developed in the procurement process about how to help on the government side evaluate hundreds of things coming through and improve processes in that way. So it's fascinating how even in corners that aren't necessarily like being shouted in the news from like people being worried about artists and musicians and AI generated speeches on and so forth. I'm seeing this concern, a lot of dialogue about it, and frankly, unfortunately, a lot of fear that people are having about it. And I think I'd be excited to talk with both of you and share with your audience perspectives that are not fear driven, that are ways that we can talk through and understand these implications along this history of the impact of technology on us. And there's no greater way to, well, there's a lot of ways to do this, but it's fascinating because movies themselves are a technology that was disruptive, but somehow people still read books and still so. But there's a lot of our experience of technology mediated by movies that I think is a neat way to, and a fun way to kind of reduce the fear of and panic that somehow everything is going to be, changed all at once forever. And I think recognizing that we're pretty resilient as humans, but we need to understand this well. And one challenge of fear is that fear not only generates anxiety and poor decision making, but it also prevents us from understanding. If we're afraid of something, we're not going to explore it, see the possibilities, understand its limits, its risks, its opportunities, and fundamentally, at the end of the day, understand how to control it for my bias, the betterment of all. So,
Yeah, impact of innovation, right?
yep,
That impact. Now, analyzing it over one episode of podcast would be really difficult, but we can get started, right? Because need is mother of all innovation, and that is one thing that I can, without a doubt, promote that, because the need that we have for AI machine learning is far greater than the AI that we ever thought we will need, because it'd be nice to have.
hmm
I need Asif Haider will tell you that this is not about just having a luxury of AI so that way we can be a little bit lazier and we can have like this augmented AI that's able to, help us cook or do crazy things. No, I just think that's a byproduct of the need that we will address with AI machine learning. And the byproduct is what's going to allow us to develop this need-based AI machine learning. Because when investment flows in, that's the only way you get your needs met, right?
hmm
So without going too far into the conversation, before we do jump into that deep end of the conversation, let's go ahead and make an introduction to
sure.
an awesome product called Talent Ascend, right? So if you're listening, welcome to AyAyAyAi, the podcast that brings you to the latest insights and trends in the world of AI machine learning. Today, we're excited to introduce you to a revolutionary platform that is changing the game in the recruitment industry. Talent Ascend. is utilizing the power of artificial intelligence to improve the recruitment process. AI has the potential to revolutionize recruitment by automating repetitive tasks, improving candidate matching, and reducing bias. By leveraging machine learning algorithms, Talent Ascend can analyze large amounts of data to identify the best candidates for a job based on candidate skills, experience, and qualifications. This eliminates the use of the resume, thank you, cover letters, thank you, and applications. Thank you. I love all three of these resumes, cover letters, and applications just gone, right? Love it. And another benefit of AI in recruitment is reducing bias. Talents Ascend can help eliminate bias by removing identifying information such as name, gender, and age defining aspects that are typically found on an applications. This can help assure that candidates are evaluated solely on their qualifications and experience, leading to a more diverse and inclusive workforce. Talent Ascends, Talent Ascend is an excellent example of how AI can be used to improve the recruitment process by leveraging cutting edge technology and a commitment to diversity and inclusion. They are making it easier for job seekers and hiring managers to find the right fit, which I love, love, love. Love Talent Ascend. The CEO is great. Everybody who works in Talent Ascend is great. By the way, it's not a paid promotion at all. I literally reached out to the CEO and told the team, can I please promote your AI capability? Because we want military veterans. We want anybody out there who's looking for jobs. We had 170 some thousand layoff recently. Anybody who's out there looking for jobs, please look at Talent Ascend and find yourself in an environment where you are no longer judged based on your gender, age, and other particular information. Just solely on talents. I love that. Let's get back into it.
Excellent.
So Lucky,
Yeah.
you know, we talk a lot about Star Trek. We talk a lot about different TV shows, right? Can you think of the one that that just sits on top of all your movies that you can say, like, it has nothing to do with AI machine learning, but it made me feel certain ways that I can never see another movie the same way. You have a movie like that?
Well, I have a couple. Ford versus Ferrari, but it has nothing to do with AI. That just happens to be a great movie.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah. No. I mean, it's like the idea is to like think about a movie that drives you, right? And here's why I asked that question. If it's Ford versus Ferrari, if you start thinking about movies that has nothing to do with AI, like say for example, one movie that changed me for good is The Godfather, right? I just became so attached to that movie and all the things that the nuances of being Godfather and doing things like Godfather, that ability to do good and bad at the same time. Yeah, when I think about that, I started realizing like, okay, is that sort of like AI? Like, what is that human level behaviors and how does AI replicate that? Because that's a lot of the fears that people have is that the humans will be replaced by an AI. But here's my thing, right? If AI is doing whatever AI does, aren't we going to be able to like make more movies like that where we will not have to think about like, okay, is this movie about AI? Is this movie about technology? Who's going to watch it? Who's not going to watch it? Using AI will create low budget movies that will allow you to see a story that is all human based, but AI created, as in AI was able to assist in making those movies, right? That's something that's been on top of my head for a while. I just want to put it out there, and I want to ask Todd the same question. I know Todd is the master of all the movies. Do you have any movie that you can think of that is not technology based, has nothing to do with AI, but impacted you deeply that you can say like, I wish they made movies like that more frequently, right?
How about
because much money these days, but if they were able to make those kind of movies where monetizing it is not the big deal, but telling that human story is far more important.
Yeah. How about my absolute favorite movie of all time?
Okay.
That would have to be The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. Are you familiar with this?
No, I haven't.
Never heard of it.
Oh, stars Peter Weller, Jeff Goldblum, a couple other folks, and it has been a a profound inspiration for my approach to business and the world. So basically, the premise is um, Buckaroo Banzai is a physicist, neurosurgeon, rock star who is doing experiments on to try to recreate experiments of a scientist from the 1920s who was able to break the barrier into the eighth dimension. Scientists who did in the 20th, by doing opening that portal, brought in sort of bad characters from the eighth dimension, as well as good characters that were trying to stop the bad characters from destroying the Earth. This all
Mm.
happened, and Orson Welles knew this, and that's why Orson Welles did the radio broadcast. The Martians are coming. It was really about the eighth dimension,
Okay.
folks, but they
Uh,
managed to
uh,
create a mythology about it that people didn't believe that that actually happened. So when Buckaroo Banzai gets into the eighth dimension again, reintroduces it, um, he and his team of like super superheroes and so forth have to stop the evil characters from the eighth dimension from destroying the world.
and
And
John Lithgow just happened to be the bad guy, which makes me really want to go see this
yeah,
movie now.
yeah, and so it's what's interesting about it. So the bad guys appear to humans like corporate executives. They open a company where everyone's first name is John and so forth. The kind of good guys, the good creatures from the eighth dimension appear to us in our world as Rastafarians. So
Oh,
Buckaroo Banzai is having to like communicate with. So yes, and there actually is some interesting, I guess, in the context of AI. A
Hmm.
lot of it is about technology because the eighth dimension folks have more advanced technology, and Buckaroo Banzai is has like caused this by trying to recreate an older science technology. So the idea of the development of science towards this goal. There is an element that you know part of it is they have to go to the president of the United States and military leaders are trying to decide it. So the idea of the relationship of technology for military purposes is kind of woven into it. Um, it's a very it was made in the 80s, so it's a little dated in terms of some of its
Right, right.
representation and
mhm.
gender things. But for me, the idea as a young person that I could grow up and
Right.
be like a rock star neurosurgeon, like physicist, and have a lot of people like support me and save the world and dress a little quirkily
Right.
and have an adventure, and then it's almost like a living comic book was just sort of
Yeah.
thrilling to me. So,
John
so
John Lithgow and Christopher Lloyd
yeah,
is the bad guy in the movie. So
hmm
Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future. Okay, seems like I gotta put that on my list because that's an interesting thing to see. Somebody
yeah,
so so that's I know as a like just a father in the TV shows or some character in the TV show. For him to play a bad guy, I gotta
yeah.
watch the movie,
Mhm.
see how he does it.
I liked him in he was the bad guy. Wasn't he the bad guy in Roger Rabbit too? Cri-
Who Framed
Roger,
Roger Rabbit? Yes, yeah,
He was the bad guy in Roger Rabbit, and he was fantastic on that in that
yeah.
movie. So
Very creepy.
so innovation, yeah, there's a lot of different innovations in different industries when it comes to AI.
hmm
And there's certain industries that are scarier than others, ones that affect us. We had this conversation a little bit last week, and we had it prior when it comes to privacy and social media. So we won't rake that one in, but
mm
there's a big for me. There's a big there's the people that understand AI a little bit, and there's an industry for it, and I feel that industry right now, for the most part, it's in an infancy, so to speak.
hmm
You have a lot of people with great ideas that know they want to grow to be this or they want to grow to be that. But these are all seems like to me there's a lot of singular, there's solutions that are in their infancy, and then there's big players
hmm
that are they're like the mom and dad of AI right now, and that's where I think there's the scary parts that us as infants, as newbies, the guys that are trying to put together, what's the latest version of this new service that we're going to start to, this repetitive task that we're going to now build an AI model for. those are the onesie twosie. Those are the sandbox. We're still trying to figure out how to crawl and walk. And then there's
Mhm.
the big players like Google, where they're trying to put together a god AI, so to speak. And I don't
Mhm.
know if that's where the differences are, where some people are scared, like Elon Musk is trying to, he's trying to fear monger. He's
Mhm.
and we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's hard for me to believe Elon Musk is saying, "Okay, AI is scary. We got to pull the reins. We got to slow down." Whenever Open AI, Tesla, self-driving cars, he's not going to stop what he's doing. I mean,
Mhm.
I guarantee you that he's not. So what does it mean? Does it mean regulation? What is it? What
Mhm.
is the fear, or what are they trying? Because honestly, it's hard for me to trust a guy that's, like you said, has monetized AI the way he has, and all of a sudden now he's saying, "Hey guys, let's pull back on it." What is your perspective on that? Well, how do you? Because
Mm.
honestly, a lot of people are scared. For me, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this guy's saying scary. It's scary.
Mhm.
You know,
Um, so it's understandable, and especially someone who, to some extent, has branded himself as someone who has no fear in a lot of
mhm,
ways, to suddenly like come forward and say, "Oh, I'm actually scared of this one thing." Um, but I think the perspective I take on it is that um, understanding the purpose of why an entity, an organization, whether it's a major multinational corporation or um, some undergraduate students in a lab in a community college or however folks are involved in it is the purpose of why you're developing it. And in my world of proposal development and identifying funding, it's follow where follow the funding um,
mhm,
and the purpose of it. So a lot of the developers of AI in a big sense are major corporations and governments. So the purpose of it is monetization, some type of either generate more wealth or reduce costs. You know, um, from the corporate or business side, and from the government side, it would be some type of policy, whether it's a military goal or a civilian goal from a policy point of view. Um, there are other purposes that AI can be developed. Within each of those, there are things that are really helpful. Being able to um, rapidly contact emergency services and have them help in crisis situations. Understanding how to issue warnings for weather alerts and so forth more effectively, comprehensively, and quickly. Um,
mhm.
as well as, quote unquote nefarious things, monitoring people without their permission or, figuring out ways to um, encourage plagiarism or, those kinds of things. Imagine a world where we could have people would be encouraged to play with AI in a way for purposes other than money and power. What if, you know, can you imagine like how AI would be used to make playgrounds more fun? You
Yeah.
know, like what if we had an AI that was tracking children's laughter and figured out a way to develop an environment that maximized how much fun kids could have on a playground? You know, and yes, maybe the association of playground people, but what if you just did that to see what kind of cool playground would you come up with or could be developed? And um, my example that I think about that I've been in conversation with a good colleague of mine, Mark Majors. We collaborate on a annual conference that I operate through a nonprofit. Serve on the board. The nonprofit's Workman Circle Educational Center, and the event is Better World Day, where we try to present different technology topics to nonprofits and kind of demystify them in ways that help nonprofits make a better world out of with it. Um, and the conversation we were having about is how do you respond to the question of are you a robot? So if you're human and you want to answer truthfully, then you say no, I'm not a robot. If you're an AI and your function is um, generate more wealth, monetize yourself, the first time you say I am a robot or I am not a human, the person on the other sign would likely hang up the call. So if you're being trained on how to, like, do not, that's a bad result because you don't have the opportunity to close a deal. Next time you're going to learn, oh, don't say that.
Hmm.
Well, okay, that might work to ultimately close more transactions. It's not the truth. What if you spend time programming AI to just tell the truth? And maybe that's where some concept of regulatory guidance comes into play. Whenever you have regulations like you were talking about, Asif, that just means it's ripe to be broken at some point. However, it's fascinating that there are, typically people think of regulations from a government point of view, our water, our trains, our, that kind of thing. But there are other ways that other regulatory frameworks. I'm a fan of ISO, International Standards Organization, regulations like for environmentalism and so forth. There's a recent one, ISO 56000, about innovation management. I want to learn more about. Any of your listeners involved, definitely connect to me because I'd like to learn more. I'm wondering if there's conversations about ISO standards for AI, machine learning. Are there ways to understand how to guide this development with some, you know, basic ethics and so forth? So, um, to your point, um, part of the fear mongering is because fear can be monetized in a, that way. My bias is that one of the functions of your podcast, which is a gift to your listeners in the world, is to demystify. Talk through these things, help people not be afraid of the conversations around this, so that we can understand it. Understanding won't make it quote unquote better. Understanding may see, oh wow, it is a really major risk if we, um, you know, use AI for, you know, um, operating ventilators in hospitals, for patients on ventilation. Oh, maybe there is an issue with AI if we had fully automated nurseries, and daycare centers. I mean, there are aspects that, as we learn more, it's like, yes, it's possible. Do we want to do that? But we only get there because we're not. The machines are taking over the world. Don't even think about it. It's say, hey, how can AI support these things? Well, maybe you know AI could help parents scheduling um, like centers. You could say, "Hey, I have an emergency. What place can I is trustworthy that I can take my kid to?" You know, um,
Yeah. Would
there
you?
are ways that you can leverage the technology to help people find resources more quickly. That doesn't mean you turn everything over.
Who,
We only figure that
who
out in talking through these.
who will be better at daycare? Is it Arnold Schwarzenegger or Vin Diesel? Because they
Mhm.
both made movies about daycare.
Oh,
Uh,
that's right.
and
Danny DeVito.
Oh,
okay,
yes.
Danny DeVito will be your preference. Right, right, right. Not AI though. Not AI in any
Yeah.
cases at all. Like daycare
Yeah,
is not.
I mean, I guess arguably, Keanu Reeves in The Matrix was in
Hmm.
a daycare center, right? That was
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a life care center, I guess. So,
Oh man. No, look. I think you're hitting on some of the major risk, and I think I want to pick that up because need is mother of all innovation, right? So it's worth it in this conversation to separate out that those AIs that you're afraid of, and you look at the other side of the spectrum, where one side of the spectrum is AIs that are dangerous and risky, but on the other side, those AIs are just necessary,
mhm,
much needed. We need that because um, we need these AIs not because they're expensive, not because they will solve a problem, but because we literally cannot sustain the way we do business today, the
mhm,
way we are able to extract resource and create new hardwares and new technologies using those resources. We need AI machine learning to reduce the amount of hardwares that we consume worldwide.
mhm,
And here's one of the numbers. The world's resources that is utilized for all 50 states, 330 millions of residents or so in the United States, we consume about majority, which is I think close to 75% of the world resources for the lifestyles that we're living in right now, right?
mhm,
That electricity that is constantly available, right? Well, there are countries where they don't have access to electricity. They have to shut it down of 3 or 4 hours a day in order to
Yeah.
conserve enough
Roll,
electricity.
rolling blackouts, right? Yeah.
Blackouts, rolling blackouts, right? So just think about it from that perspective and how much resources you have in your dishwasher, in your multiple laptops, multiple devices. So these resources that are being utilized, right? If we are able to reduce this hardware, because the need is mother of all innovation, we need to have a reduction of hardware that we are utilizing. And I'm not talking about hardware as in computer-based hardware, anything like anything that you can touch and feel. If you're able to redesign that and accomplish its usage, as in the dishwasher, the doors in your house, the windows in your house, all these products that you are utilizing right now, they are logistic heavy, as in somebody in somewhere in the supply chain has to go get the resources, put them together, and get them to the last mile of the product's journey, which is at your home, right? So in your home, in your businesses, you have to reduce the use cases of all these products, so that way you can move into the world where you still look. I'm not taking anything away from anybody. Nobody should be able to, nobody should be able to take anything away from you, or nobody can take anything away from you without you volunteering it, because you found a better product. And that's what I'm promoting. You found a better way to do business without these hardwares that we are utilizing today. So AI machine learning, one example that I always talk about is the fact that you will have the ability to display without a monitor using augmented reality or virtual reality. Use a single device like a phone, so that way you can have multiple monitors always in front of you. And not talking about VR goggles, talking about artificial intelligence and this ability to put multiple screens together and display from your phone using augmented reality, right? So these kind of capabilities, like to get rid of your monitor and display, right? Get rid of your keyboard, right? That keyboard that has like that long wire that anywhere you go, you're trying to move the mouse around and it gets stuck in the mouse. Get rid of the mouse completely, right? Get rid of the keyboard completely. So that's 3 hardware just off your desktop already, right? And you're able to communicate with your system using voice instead of keyboard, and the system is able to communicate right back to you just the way you would like it to, because it's personalized. It understands how you speak, what are some of the thought process that you have, and what are some of the patterns that you previously engaged the system with. And the system is able to say, no longer do you need a keyboard. Just tell me what you want, I'll get it done for you. So what movie is that? Iron Man, right? Jarvis.
Right.
Movie reference, spoiler alert, right? So we have a Jarvis-like system in the future. What that does is it reduces these hardwares and it opens up possibilities for other hardwares to be utilized for other reasons, right? And when I mentioned earlier the consumption of within all 50 states, 330 some million people, there are 7 billion other people, or give or take 7 billion people, that are interested in having the same resource as us. So the next level, the next generation of these resource-heavy hardwares that will have to be manufactured, they'll have to be manufactured for close to, I don't know, maybe billion or 2 billion. Some people, they're like, I want the same kind of luxury. I want to match it with the way the U.S. population has it, right? Because at that point, they're able to say, like, our currency is good enough that I can actually buy that product for everybody in my neighborhood, right? Everybody in my neighborhood can afford that. So what I'm trying to get at is that the population demand for these hardwares are going to increase. And in order to AI machine learning, right, using this AI machine learning type of capabilities like voice AI, the ability to do computer vision, the ability to do the personalization and recommendation system that are able to provide more services to us utilizing the less hardware, I think will it's like do something today so that you can thank yourself 10 years down the road. Don't get caught up in the news cycle where everything you hear about Google is baby AIs are being born and then that AI is going to grow up.
And then it's going to start a podcast about AI. And then
you're going to replace me from talking, right? Yeah, you got all sorts of fears that will always come at your way. It's only a 24-hour cycle. You got to do something that, pays off in the future.
Can I just interject? Because I hadn't noticed this before, but Asif, AI is in both your first name and your last name.
Oh,
and so I can imagine that the AI generated podcast about AI probably may have your may have you in it. But I think that
These hands are human hands. These are not
yes,
robots. I'm telling you. I'm
exactly.
for
He's a
real.
robot. He's a robot. Trust me.
But what but but I think what's awesome, or actually, are you going to be a Danger Will Robinson robot?
Yeah, just give him the Turing
Danger,
test.
Oh, the Turing test.
Danger,
You're,
William.
you see a turtle upside down. Remember that? Remember that? But so at any rate, but what I want to offer along those lines is um, the the idea um, of what we have as resilient human beings, our power to create and be creative and be innovative. Um, I think is pretty amazing. There when we think about people's development of technology and the response to technology, and you made a reference to patterns, and yes, we are pattern seeking creatures. We do.
Mhm.
One of the powers of innovation is finding patterns that others don't see and breaking patterns and seeing what happens with it. Um, you can do it for fun, as you play games and so forth. You can do it for survival, if you're trying to get to situations of safety in life. Um, and I think that it's a great way to, if an AI was trying to develop a Turing test of, you know, um, of people, one of the most interesting things is the concept of nonsense. The idea of what if you did things that um, were quote unquote unpredictable. You
Mhm.
know, if you get a phone call from what seems like possibly an AI and you're not interested in continuing the conversation, if you started responding in ways that are like, well, um, so is this hello, is this Todd Packer? Hey, that voice sounds like pretty comfortable like a human. Um, on Thursdays, the octopus eats macaroni.
Mhm.
Um, and what does the system respond to that? As a human, you might say, "Pardon me," or "What do you say?" Um, you know, what does you may get? I'm sorry, I don't understand that. You know,
Right.
um, the the idea of I earlier in my life I studied improvisational theater, and there's something powerful about improvisational theater of catching people to believe a story that you create in the moment without you know tools, technology. You're just creating a scene with words and gestures, and the notion um, of innovation being driven by understanding patterns and disrupting them um, is kind of a way that you can be playful with AI and still sort of maintain your humanity. The model that I take to this is the Dadaist movement. The Dadaists emerged after World War One in Europe. I mean, this is my preschool. Your art historian listeners, feel free to lambast me in the comments about misrepresenting. But in general, my understanding is that the Dadaists arose in response to World War One, particularly in Europe. World War One was sort of like, hey, this is what our technology brought us to. You know, devastation at a scale unimaginable prior to that. So the Dadaists came up and said, we're rejecting all technology. We're going to make a movement that will not be, and it became particularly threatening. There's a show, a famous anecdote about a show in as Germany was going towards fascism, and a lot of these artists were being persecuted. Um, Nazi government, my understanding, it's Nazi government held a show called Degenerate Art, where they're kind of bringing this art together to kind of showcase how awful and horrible it is, and it was one of the best attended art shows. Um, so this idea of um, how do we respond um, as humans, if you were that concerned about, AI, if you're not going to respond with fear, but you're going to respond with um, a counter um, movement or a
Being
counter
creative,
approach to it. I'm
right?
sorry.
responsive with creativity, right? We
Yeah.
respond back to
Res-
the AI with
Yeah.
creativity.
Yeah. Respond with creativity and um, and see what happens with that. You
And
know, if,
that's the ChatGPT challenge right now, is that
mhm.
more people that are engaging with ChatGPT to make it better that ChatGPT is able to learn. But the concern is that, like, even if it learns, is it learning just from yesterday and now retaining it, right?
Yeah.
Did it learn the positive experience from last hour and retained it, or took the last 8 hours of negativity and
Yeah.
responded with that, right?
And
So
and
there's just a whole lot of creativity that has to go in order to keep that model from not drifting away
Hmm.
from the
and
the course that it was set originally.
and fundamentally, the idea of bias comes into mix too. You know, when
Hmm.
and that, when people talk about personal biases, social biases, institutional biases, how that reflects in um, who's doing the training, kind of thing. When you're limiting the input, like you said, 7 billion people on planet Earth, but if only 1,000 are training the tools, um, what happens if someone is um, asking in a language that isn't spoken very often, or like how is are we going to is the AI going to start ignoring things and replicating our biases? And that happened in a lot of internet algorithm development and so forth. And I think that being conscious of that as well, like figuring out um, what it means um, to truly develop a technology for all is going to be is another kind of risk, right? You know, if you what are these examples you're hearing about people engaging in AI conversations after a while and they start becoming really inappropriate, and strange. I mean, yes, I would think if an AI is monitoring all the communications and what people look to on the internet, yeah, it's going to pull in a lot of probably not the best, data sources
Yeah.
of of what people are watching online or listening to or responding to. But um, that's why I strongly um, want to open this conversation of what if you just had people training and playing with AI for other purposes than money and power? You know,
Hmm.
what if like, hey, how about like, could we train AI to be, you know, um, kind of decent, or like, can we train AI to, be courteous, chivalrous? I mean, how do we train AI to not be a jerk, which probably would be
How
like,
how
yeah,
Yeah.
how would you train it, Lucky, if you had to
Well,
train
well, I mean, see, the
character?
thing is, I think that in life, we would have to train it much like life a little bit. It would have to understand, obviously, the quadrants of good and bad. But the thing is this, that with all the potential that we have with AI, the good potential for good, we also have the same potential for bad, and like you said, there's going to be a bias. See, we're used to being in our environments, kind of like socially, we see, we have different classes. Well, AI, I think, is going to fall within that same thing, the logic. We are used to seeing and answering a certain way. There are people out there, there's different societies that they carry themselves different, and the logic is not there. And so I see, and I'm thinking way far out. I see that there's a fear for me is having a centralized AI at some point, like a Google, a big conglomerate that says this is the AI, where
mhm,
I think it needs to be more decentralized. And kind of like what we're starting off now, everybody has pockets of AI, and it stays separated. And if there is an area where it is put together, it is to help a common good. But my fear is that there's going to be a one all, state sponsored AI,
yeah,
much like there is in China, that really rules over people, as opposed to is something where we've talked about this. What is AI? What is AI? And AI is something that helps us make better decisions. It's like a fifth or a fifth. It's like a third arm, that says, okay, I'm going to enable you to make better decisions. I'm going to help you, as opposed to something that rules you. And there's
Mhm.
it's a this fine line. It's like, so I think, long story is, if I were to make an AI, it would have to know the balance, obviously, of good and bad, but really just know that, hey, in life, I would like to serve you. If I can make
Yeah.
that one of the foundational principles, is how do I serve you? And then that would be it.
Uh,
You know, but
uh,
but I don't know if that makes sense to everyone out there. You know
it
what I
does.
mean?
Um, I won't do the spoiler for the Twilight Zone. Was it the Twilight Zone episode that was about that? Yeah, I
Did,
think so. About
did they ban that?
about aliens that came to Earth, um, with a book, and they were like healing all the illnesses and so forth, and they were only able to translate the title, and it was um, How to Serve Humans kind of thing,
Mhm.
and then there's a twist at the end that I
Oh,
won't
okay.
spoil. But at any
Yeah.
rate, the idea of that, the notion of servant leadership that you sometimes hear about in when you think about talk about enlightened leadership in general.
Mhm.
Are we going to give up leadership to leadership decision making to something um, that is not um, you know not human in that sense. And that is a choice of people, right? We don't always get to choose our experiences. Hopefully, we get to choose how to respond, kind of thing. And and by that, you know, that's what AI is doing. AI doesn't necessarily choose to respond, right? In the same sense of choice. AI is responding based on this is your end goal. But
Mhm.
in any situation, we as humans, and what's powerful about innovation is that just like the number of times you make a decision in the course of the day, what the next word out of my mouth is, and then this next one are all micro decisions we make all the time, are all points of the opportunity to break a pattern and innovate or not. And as we choose to respond from a place of, for lack of a term, equanimity, from a place of, okay, I'm not responding because my um, dopamine has been jacked up because of these of the clickbait I've been watching on the stuff about AI, like dread scrolling AI, like um, stuff. It's like, okay, if I really think about, yeah, for me right now, it's kind of cool to have some tools that help me develop a presentation faster than I would without it. Well, that's kind of neat. It's kind of clever, the stuff that's in it. When I tried ChatGPT, it was pretty good at coming up with superhero origin stories um, and some ideas on what was it? I was typing in some stuff about related to a project, but um, it wasn't so good at the jokes. And um, are you familiar with JoJo's? Do they have those where you're at? You heard of those?
Does
Um,
drink?
that might. It's actually in our my part of Ohio. JoJo's are kind of like really large French fries, so they're
Oh,
like sections of a. So instead of small, they're like pretty big parts of potatoes, deep fried.
Mhm.
Highly recommend them. Um, when I asked for a recipe of JoJo's and ChatGPT at the time I did this, they didn't include potatoes. So you know, stuff like that um, are sort of like,
Yeah.
and I didn't respond like, haha, the humans will always win,
right.
or like, oh my gosh, I figured that it's sort of like, oh, if I'm going to play with ChatGPT and have kind of like a balanced point of view of like, okay, yeah, I could see why it would be concerning for um, professors if students are um, like typing in their assignments and just getting this back. Students aren't learning. ChatGPT is learning. You
Right.
know, but the students aren't learning. Um, what is plagiarism in that space? So yeah, okay, I can see it as a concern. Let's figure out how we want to address that. Just the same
Yeah.
way as people using
Wow.
cell phones get distracted when they're driving. Okay, there's a whole host of ways that we can try to address this, given that it's going to be really hard to change the behavior of stuff. So I believe that the gift of innovation is if we, and by we I mean all of us, all the people that are gifted the opportunity, that the algorithms got them to listen to your podcast, and so forth, to the people that are designing these systems, to the people that have no access to technology at all, somehow are engaged in a way to play with this, to say, hey, and just like we learn, um, you know, hey, that's the sharp edge, or hey, the I like playgrounds as you're getting the playground slide has been out in the sun too long and it's super hot. It's a lot of fun to ride on it, but it's too hot right now, so that how we learn to do this, not from a point of fear, but from a point of value, if you want to look at it that way.
And
Um,
and I think
and
one of
I
the
think
things
that,
that was being discussed is the digital twin, right?
yep,
I think that's the kind of mention that you need, right? Those are the digital twins is the one that helps me as a podcast guy to reach out to more podcast listeners.
mm,
But if I was to do that myself, how much effort and time would I have to put in?
yeah. Um,
If I give
although,
it to a digital twin, it does it automatically, right?
yeah,
But now these digital twins are sectionalized, as in
yeah,
this digital twin figures out like, okay, what sort of budget did Asif give me, and how do I go ahead and advertise this podcast to more people? And as
although,
Todd, you'll have a digital twin to help you with your presentation, to help you
yep,
make better decisions. Now, if you're making better decisions on a specific topic, not all of it, right?
mm,
Um, how long till that digital twin acts like you and start making all sorts of decisions?
I
But
don't
those
know.
are all
Oh,
based on your
yeah,
preference, right? How much you are
yes,
able to
yeah.
give that AI the authority to do such things, or how does it get hacked?
Yep. So is that going to be like where I'm from the planet where there's only two people left, right? Half black, half white, and we're destined to fight my enemy is my twin, or am I Kirk in the box fighting the anti-Kirk? Is it?
No, you're the
Um,
Yeah.
meme. You're the meme where Spider-Man is pointing at another Spider-Man.
yeah. Okay.
And
Um,
like, which one is the
yeah.
real one?
Yeah. But I think that the and since I'm all about threes, it's more like the good, the bad, and the ugly final showdown is sort of
Mhm.
like you, the AI, and the rest of the world, right? It's like when you think about what's in um, the approach to this. One thing along the lines is that when you think about disrupting patterns. Um, I think it'd be awesome, as you leverage your digital twin to figure out how to promote the podcast. But what if you um, hired some town criers to go into different cities with those big bells and start, hear ye, the podcast is beginning and in 5 minutes. From my point of view, it'd be like what? But talk about getting attention, right? That'd be an innovative approach to get people to listen to your podcast. Or if you send out postcards, or whatever. They're the things that are um, like things that seem like disconnected, but actually get people to pay attention. Because isn't that if we think about um, fundamentally why the news cycle is doing this, why this technology is there, is that this is where our attention is at. With the recently rewatched The Social Dilemma from Netflix, and references to an attention economy and how much these systems are designed. But attention is also highly personal. Not necessarily technology driven. Our attention is tied to what is emotionally important to us. Whether that's broad things like survival and family and friendship and so forth, faith, however those things, or very narrow, um, you know, like video that looks really kind of cool that I know I shouldn't be watching, but it was recommended to me, and it's like just this thing that's just so perfect. But if I click on it, I'm reinforcing the algorithm, so I'm not going to train the algorithm. I'm going to find this thing some other way. But oh my gosh, I love that music. For me, it's my favorite band is Sparks, and I, it's really hard for me on Spotify to not like every Sparks song because I'm like, I gotta keep liking like the country songs and the industrial music and the kids songs just to make sure that the algorithm doesn't quite, you know how to
Mhm.
deal with me. And that's how um, I find having fun with innovation. So yes, part of what I do is online research to identify opportunities, articles, that kind of thing. Yes, more and more advanced AI tools will help me find information more quickly, but the alignment of that information,
Mm.
is it of value? Are the opportunities I'm finding, there's no shortage of funding opportunities or contracts to pursue those opportunities. Um, and in the case of customers, it's excellence. What is so excellent about you that the world needs to know? What's the opportunity that's out there? And how do we align the value you have to offer for that opportunity? Well, yeah, AI can find more opportunities. Um, AI might be a way to help someone repeatedly demonstrate their excellence. Um, that alignment, I find, is the value I as an actual human can bring to this because that is understanding, that's attention, that's listening to customers in a way that's not just what they say or what they type. It's where their eyes glint. It's what are they really passionate about, and trying that, saying, "Hey," and people say like, "Gosh, how'd you find those things?" By different search combinations of search terms, and scanning and saying, "Hey, this is part of its intuition. Part of it might be doing this a lot. Part of it's what may generate." But that um, crafting those things together to create extraordinary results from limited resources, um, that is the promise not only of AI, but the promise of innovation and promise of um, what is great about us as human beings. You know,
And
um,
and how do we, let's say Asif knows how to contact you.
mhm,
Lucky will find out how to contact you, but
yeah.
how can rest of the world who needs your alignment,
Mhm.
how do they find you?
So I two places I'd recommend. One is LinkedIn because I find that that's a really neat platform for me to connect to
Active.
folks and communicate. Um, and so yes, please find me on LinkedIn. Happy to invite folks to my network and that type of thing and continue this conversation. And then um, ResearchGate. Folks familiar with
Research.
ResearchGate?
Mhm.
Okay.
ResearchGate is
Okay.
sort of a platform I'm trying to get more handle on. Typically, it's for academic researchers to share research ideas and so forth. I want to start expanding my presence there, so that's another platform. You know, um, I think that that's a great place to start, and then we'll continue the conversation from there. And um, I'm big on um, understanding phenomenon. So
Mhm.
I think what's exciting about this conversation, exciting about this phenomenon of AI and machine learning is when people engage, have civil conversations to spark ideas and say, okay, how will we deal with this? Not run away from it, not you know praise it in the main ways, but understand its value in certain circumstances, its risks, its dangers, and then as a community, as a society, as a world, negotiate, okay, how will we manage this? You know, and when we have those conversations, um, when it's not about, the, um, I'm doing my best not to make references to Terminator because every single reference to machine learning is Terminator. So
Skynet.
I'm
Go
not going
for
to
it.
mention Terminator. So and so and now the AI algorithms will say, another Terminator
That,
reference.
that
But
that
yeah,
Terminator always comes back.
yeah,
Terminator
but
always comes back to the
but I
party.
think the reason it resonates so much from a fear point of view is that fundamentally Terminator is about you know um, to some extent regret. I mean, yeah, the special effects, the story, the contrast. It's a very like contrast between human and technology. Um, but there's a powerful three in that too, right? There's the Terminator machine, the rebel hero from the future, and the Sarah Connor. You know, that notion of the premise of you know what if we are faced with that choice and will we regret? It's like people talk about fear of missing out. There's this fear of regret. You know, if we can just sort of accept the idea that we will not be perfect, we are not perfect. What we create automates processes, but automates potentially imperfect processes. Um, we as humans make mistakes, and hopefully we learn from those. Um, does AI make mistakes? No, AI learns, responds, adapts. You know, um, the phenomenon of mistakes, of regrets, of you know, is what makes us human. And so, um, I think what's missed in the fear of a Terminator future is like, wow, the human came back. The human
Mm.
came back to make something human last into the future. And if we take that lesson, not that the corporation designed a powerful machine that ended up fighting each other. No, the humans found a way. The humans, and how did the Terminator figure out how to come back? It had to be in a human form.
Mm.
But the humans came back to make a human solution. And as long as, that perspective, I think, so because I'm not going to mention that movie, I'll say uh, 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 a future movie that I think is relevant and maybe unsung from that point of view is okay. You can put me on the spot, but let me.
We will have
Is the man who fell to earth, David Bowie? The
to.
idea,
Oh, okay.
and the idea of if we find and retain our humanity through all these adventures, through AI, machine learning, innovation, we're pretty awesome,
Yeah.
and resilient. And I think that when we move beyond fear or accept fear and still explore and try to understand, this technology will change. How we respond to it may change, but we own this, and we got this.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say we got this episode downright packed. Like we're having so much fun with this podcast. Look,
Yeah.
amount of movies and amount of reference we have to make. Let's make podcast episode number 2 with Todd Pecker and Hollywood version, right? so, so with that, Todd, thank you so much for making the
Thank
time.
you.
Because when you bring the human into the conversation, when you humanize the AI machine learning, when you're able to tell a story through the human lens for an AI machine learning possibilities, it all starts making sense. And what it does, it chips away at the fear. So without any doubt, I can say, ay, 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 ay. So excited.
Ay, 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 oi, ay.
Ay, ay, ay. So Lucky, how do you say it?
And just to kind of bring it full circle, Todd, look, you brought a different perspective where typically in life, I say life is a negative and you're looking for a positive, and you flip the script when it comes to AI. You've really, really focused on bringing a positive to the algorithm. And maybe in the future, we'll see that we'll be able to put together AIs that in life support us, and they are a positive thing to humanity. And so thank you for being part of our podcast today, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again. Thank you again.
Excellent. It's an honor to be here, and keep up the great work.